All right, Jesse, we've beat up the off season long enough. Are you ready for rapid fire?
I am. I am. I have been looking forward to it all day, actually.
All right, the
Sometimes
list
I don't even read the rapid fire questions. That way I can just give you my off the top, just gut
right off the
response.
cuff.
Yeah.
Just go, baby. All right, well, just this afternoon we found out former Notre Dame running back Logan Diggs has announced he's transferring to LSU. What do you think of that choice?
I don't think that's a surprise at all. I think that is, if you ask most people, that was probably the top landing spot, and I think it makes sense because he was recruited under the BK regime, and obviously there is interest, from BK. I think it helps LSU. It's definitely not a negative thing. I think what's more interesting to me is it shows the state of Notre Dame and its roster. When you're talking about Alabama plucked Notre Dame's backup quarterback, LSU plucked Notre Dame's backup running back, and I guess you could make the case that he was splitting time, with Estime, but Diggs moved to wide receiver. There were other guys kind of working up the depth chart, Jabron Payne, and I always forget the other guy's name. But basically, what I'm getting at is if you're a Notre Dame fan, and then of course the wide receiver going over Styles
Chris
going
Tyree.
over to
Oh,
Ohio
Styles going to
State,
Ohio State.
a
Yeah.
guy that was fourth or fifth on Notre Dame's depth chart, wide receiver going over to Ohio State. I think it shows, at least to me, that we should feel good about the state of Notre Dame's roster if these other schools, quote unquote, big time national contenders, are kind of plucking some of you know, these backups essentially of Notre Dame. So I think it shows overall really good strength of Notre Dame's roster. And I feel even more confident in what Marcus Freeman is building if other big name schools have to go after some of these guys that are depth pieces essentially.
Yeah, they're not transferring down to MAC schools or, Ohio Valley or wherever it happens to be. No offense to any of them because everybody gets offended by something these days, including our fans down in LSU, apparently, who, like, even though Antonio Carter totally snubbed LSU, they're still mad to hear that he snubbed LSU, apparently. But, like, LSU's getting a good running back, and he's from Louisiana. There was some back and forth for him coming out of high school. Was he going to go to LSU? Was he going to come to Notre Dame? He came to Notre Dame, decided apparently that, at least part of his decision was wanting to be closer to home. So he's going to get closer to home. They're going to get a good running back now, and the thing is, he's probably going to be splitting just as much time down there at LSU as he was splitting here at Notre Dame with Andre Estime because they've got a pretty good running back coming back. Josh Williams was their top running back last year, their second leading rusher after their quarterback, Jaden Daniels. He was their leading running back rusher, but Daniels led the Tigers in rushing last year. So he's still going to split some time. Like you said, it's not like they're, losing these guys to chumps. Yeah, as Derek says, like Jacob Lacey went to Oklahoma as well. Like these guys are in demand. They've been commodities. Now there are some other guys out there who are lower on the depth chart for Notre Dame who haven't gone to as big of schools, and in many cases, at least in some of the cases, haven't landed anywhere yet. Hopefully they do end up soon. Maybe if they had a portal combine right now, they'd be able to, get some more eyes on them. But, hopefully it works out well for Logan Diggs. But again, like from his future perspective, I think he's going to be splitting just as much time down there in Baton Rouge as he was up here at Notre Dame.
Yeah. It's just he'll be a little bit closer to home.
Yep. Do you buy or sell that having Marcus Freeman as head coach increases the value for Notre Dame in its next apparel deal?
Oh, this is 100% a buy because we're talking about, at Notre Dame, what's the most popular, sought after sport? It's football. Okay. Who's the head coach of the football team? A young 30-something-year-old man that is, I will say it, an attractive guy. And anytime he seems to put on any sort of apparel, everyone rushes to figure out what it is and where they can get it. And so when you put all those things together, I definitely think that having Marcus Freeman as your head coach only increases your value and what you can get out of an apparel deal.
I mean, at the very least, he's added value. So it might not be like, well, Marcus Freeman's our head coach, so we need an
Oh, he's not
extra
like
$2 million.
the main selling point, but he
Right.
definitely
No,
adds something to it.
exactly. Like I said, at the very least, it's added value. But at the same time, kind of like what you're, the man is a walking billboard. Like every
Right.
Notre Dame game is on national TV, and whatever he's wearing is going to be seen by millions every week. And then for that matter, like the stuff that he wears at practice gets photographed, and people see those photos and they're like, where can I get the sweatshirt that Marcus Freeman is wearing? Or he goes up to the podium at the press conferences and it's, where can I get, the hoodie or the vest or whatever, that new shirt that Marcus Freeman is wearing. It's in high demand by the fan base, and quite frankly, I don't think it's been capitalized on enough by Under Armour. Like even pre Marcus Freeman, like a lot of this stuff that we you'll see Marcus Freeman wearing isn't even for sale in the bookstore in many cases yet. Now, from what I've heard, they try to float stuff out and experiment and see what's popular and stuff like that, but it's something the NFL has down to a science. Like pre-2000s or so, the NFL, like, coaches would still wear their suit and tie and all that different stuff, but they wore whatever they wanted. But now the NFL rolls out the new gear, and as soon as they roll it out, players and coaches are wearing it on the sideline, and then you watch the game, and guess what? People buy it. Like, I don't know how many times that's happened. Everyone on the sideline is a walking billboard, and Marcus Freeman is easily one of the 10 most recognizable people in college football, I think, right now, especially coaches. But he's young, photogenic, in shape. He wears the trendy stuff, all that stuff. So I agree with you. Like, I think that there is a lot of value that he brings to whoever ends up with a new apparel deal than, just like some middle-aged guy wearing khakis and a windbreaker out there. So I've got some spreads on some of Notre Dame's games this season. They're currently favored by 21.5 in the season opener against Navy, 8.5-point underdog against Ohio State, and a 1-point favorite at home against USC. So if you were going to make a 3-leg parlay on those three props, which way are you going to bet?
I would bet 3 legs. I would bet on them not to cover the spread against Navy. I would bet on them to cover the spread against Ohio State, and then I would bet on them to cover the spread against USC. So USC, I would say that, yes, I would take that 1-point favorite and say that they would cover and win by more than 1 point. Against Ohio State, I would take the 8.5 and say, okay, even if they're to lose, I don't think that they lose by more than 8.5 points. And then I just don't see them beating Navy by more than 22. It's the first game of the year. Notre Dame never really Notre Dame always struggles against covering the spread against teams that they should. And so, yeah, that would be my 3-leg parlay, just to get it out there one more time. I don't think they cover 21 against Navy. I think they cover against Ohio State, and I think that they cover against USC.
Derek posted something about 14.5. I'm double checking all my lines here. And no, all my lines are still correct. So it's 21.5 against Navy, 8.5 underdog against Ohio State. And that's, I'm with you on the Navy game. I'm just scared by that 21.5, mostly because what they won by just 3 points last year. But then, like, you go back the 3 meetings before that, the average margin of victory was almost 4 touchdowns. But then you had last year. And the other side of it, though, is the last time they opened the season against Navy was the last Ireland game. They won that game by 40 points, so like how much different is it when you open up the season against them versus doing it in the middle of the season when you have 1 week to prepare? And Navy's got a new head coach coming in as well. I typically stay away from the big spreads like that. The fact that they were 7-6 against the spread last season doesn't help. So I agree with you. I would not lay the points for Notre Dame, the 21.5. I would go the other way with that with Navy, but I like them plus 8.5 against Ohio State. I like them -1 at home against USC.
So we essentially said the same thing. I think if you could take it a step further, if you wanted just to money line all 3, I'd feel pretty comfortable with that, with Ohio State being obviously the kicker and the one that you'd get the most juice out of. But I could definitely take a 3-game parlay of all money lines.
See, now we've got two completely disparate opinions here. Father David, I don't gamble, but if I did, I would hammer that over against Navy. We're hanging 60 on him. Okay, but what if
Father
Navy,
David, for
what
not
if Navy
betting,
scores 40?
you sure know the terminology of hammering the over.
That's right. And then D-Rock says first game Navy under 21. Again, like two completely different ends of the spectrum there. I mean, I think that opening the season should play a big factor for Notre Dame, but at the same time, I'm just scared by that 7-6 against the spread last year and the way that Navy game looked last year. So I'm just scared by that. 21.5, 3+ touchdowns is just too much after last year. Yeah. See, and Michael says Marcus Freeman's going to smash Navy due to this being the first game that is totally the Freeman era. Father David with an admission hasn't always been a priest. Fill in the blank. It's blank that Peacock is going to exclusively stream an NFL playoff game in prime time this season.
It's a money grab that Peacock is going to exclusively stream a game this season. All they're making you do is sign up for a membership, just like they did with, airing that Notre Dame game on Peacock. They want people to rush over, sign up for their membership, and then forget about it and forget to cancel their membership, and then just keep, getting those reoccurring themes. Because, I mean, who wants to tune into Peacock? Who wants just to download, subscribe, get your free month trial or whatever, just so you can
Apparently
watch?
not you.
So you could watch a game on, an NFL primetime game on Peacock. It's an overall money grab. They want to feel like they're contending with the big boys and that they're in the same league as everyone else. But the reality is they aren't, and they only get one game of the season. So I just think it's annoying. If you're going to do this, at least put like more than one game on Peacock. That way you have, a reason to maybe consistently use it. But when you only have one game, it's clear and obvious that you want people to come, forget about their membership, and then just keep getting these reoccurring fees from Peacock.
See, and this is going to be the key, what Derek says. He says 100% it's going to be a Cowboys game. They know Cowboys fans will buy it. And I'm really curious what game it ends up being, because I personally, if I've got, we've got the free version of the Peacock app, but the Notre Dame games, for example, you have to pay the subscription rate to watch the Notre Dame games on there. I'm assuming it's going to be the same for this NFL playoff game, even though in none of the articles that I've read does it actually say that. But I mean, why else would you be doing it if you're shelling out $110 million? You've got to get some money back. And how do you do it? With your subscription rate. If it's not my team, I can do without it. And it's going to be an 8:00 game. It's going to be the bookend of a doubleheader. NBC, the actual TV network, is going to have a 4:30 game. And this is going to be an 8:00 game at night. So if it's not my team, I can do without it. And I'm going to be really curious to see the kind of number that it does, though, because the NFL is at least pretty happy with that Amazon deal that they did to put the Thursday night games on there, even though they only average 9.5 million viewers per game. They had a spike for that Chiefs Chargers to start off the season, and then it dipped, and the average ended up being 9.5 million. The biggest thing, though, that I saw was the median viewing age for the Amazon games was the youngest that the NFL has had in almost 10 years. And I think that that's what they're looking at. They want to get a younger audience, and putting these games on these streamers, they think is their way to do it. And at least when you look at that Amazon thing, it paid off for them in that aspect. So, but the number is what's going to matter from both ends, what they end up, how many people actually end up, logging in, paying, and watching this thing. But I've just got a bad feeling. It's all these sports, none of them care about the actual viewer. They're just looking for more revenue streams. And, you've got to keep, it's not enough just to subscribe to cable. You got to get your ticket, and you've got to get this streaming package. You've got to get that streaming package. Everyone's got their hands out for something else. And that's Chi-Town. Us old guys have all the money, though. And that's right as well. Yeah, and that D-Rock says, I don't think Peacock has ever released any viewer numbers on the Notre Dame games. They haven't, and most of these streamers don't release numbers unless they are good. Like Amazon wasted no time with that Chiefs Chargers game telling everyone what the numbers were last year. And as the season went on, there was there were less and less, fewer and fewer, releases about what the ratings were for these games because they were getting lower. And then at the end of the season, this 9.5 million was reported. You haven't heard the numbers on those Peacock games because I think it's pretty safe to assume if the numbers were good on those Notre Dame Peacock games, you would have heard a number by now, but you haven't heard a number. So the Jets are going to host the Dolphins in the NFL. Speaking of more streaming games, Jets are going to host the Dolphins in the NFL's first Black Friday game the day after Thanksgiving. Jets apparently are interested in hosting that game every year. Do you buy or sell a permanent host for that game like you have with the Lions and Cowboys on Thanksgiving?
Yeah, I do actually like the idea of adding kind of a consistent team to play, every Black Friday. I don't really have an issue with that. I think the only time I'd have an issue if it was the same two teams every year, because I think you can get enough variation of cycling in different teams in and out. But I think it'd be cool to have another team where it's like, okay, I know that the Jets are going to play every Black Friday, but it's it's going to change every year who they might play. And I think you guys talked about this recently. I am not a fan of what the NFL has done with the Thanksgiving and Christmas games this year because they're all divisional matchups, and I don't like divisional matchups on special days like this. And as long as they stay away from that on the Black Friday, I would be cool with just about anything else. But I hate divisional matchups on holidays.
I do too. Like Lions Packers, I don't mind, I guess, because it's not my division, and at least by putting the Packers on there, you're expecting. I was about to say you're expecting a better game, but Aaron Rodgers isn't there anymore. I don't think, like personally, I don't think this Black Friday game needs a permanent host like that. Like, how about like how many years have the Jets been good in the last 50 or
Right.
60? Like, do you really want it to be the Jets every year, just like you've got the Lions on Thanksgiving Day? So you're tuning into the first half of the game, hoping it's a game, and then see what happens after that. I kind of like mixing it up a little bit. It would make some sense for it to be the Jets, though, because it is New York. So you have a big market and all that, big TV market and all that kind of stuff. But like we were talking about those matchups, what I found confusing, no, maybe not confusing, but like at least interesting is the 49ers are playing on both Thanksgiving night and Christmas night. Like they're on both of those major holidays. One, I wouldn't want to play on both major holidays. Two, why do you have one team playing on both of those holidays? I think that they should be mixing. They're the only repeat team on both of those. I think that they should be mixing it up a little bit more myself.
Same.
So Dan Patrick says Dan Campbell is the most recognizable member of the Detroit Lions. My question, and this is actually a Dan Patrick poll question as well. I didn't see what any of the answers were. Which other teams is the head coach the first person that comes to mind when you think about those NFL teams?
Okay, so I have like one that's definite and two I feel pretty good about, and the third one's
Okay.
just kind of eh. I think first and foremost, at least for me, when I think of the Rams, I think of Sean McVay, like off the top. And so
It's
that's
interesting because I feel the same. Like you can probably make a case for Aaron Donald or Matt Stafford, but McVay is still the first one I think of when I think of
that's
the Rams.
everyone every time you say the Rams. I don't know if it's just because he's young and just because of their prior Super Bowl and his outspokenness and his him talking about potentially leaving football already. So that was one for me. Two was Belichick and the Patriots. And
Right.
I say that just because Brady is gone. If Brady wasn't there or
Right. And
still was there,
we're talking about like current team especially. Yeah,
yeah.
exactly. If Tom Brady was there, he'd be the first person, I think.
But right now, the current state of the Patriots, I think of Bill Belichick first and foremost. And then the last one for me, and I want to make sure I get the name right. It's the Dolphins coach,
Mike McDaniel.
Mike McDaniel. And again, that one is just because of, just that's a lot of just this past season and seeing kind of the clips of him on the sideline, his interactions with Tua. Like when he was like, yeah, I was up late last night watching all of your video, your high school or college tape. And like, that's just something that stuck with me, right? Like and then like he was at one point he was like vaping on the sideline. He got caught with a vape. It's just like, I think of just him again being another kind of younger coach, being kind of, up to more of like the antics, I guess I should say. But those are the three that really came to mind to me when you talk about, you name a team, and this is, you kind of immediately think of the head coach.
Yeah. My first one was Belichick. Second one was McVay. And then my third one is, and I've seen someone else say this, the Pittsburgh Steelers. With Big Ben Roethlisberger being gone now, Mike Tomlin is really like, I don't know if I could name another player right now. I'm sure if I thought long and hard, I'd be, obviously Chase Claypool was traded from there last year. So I guess you got Kenny Pickett, but he's not exactly the face of the program. I think it's more Tomlin at this point. So the Steelers would be my third. My fourth is Pete Carroll. Like,
I like Pete too.
Like Pete Carroll, I guess I've got to say, the Seahawks. That would be my next one, because if Russell Wilson was still there, he would be it. But with no Russell Wilson, I mean, you've got DK Metcalf. That's I just think
no
of
more
Pete
Legion
Carroll.
of Boom.
Yeah, that's right. I think of Pete Carroll first, and Vrabel, as Tommy Guns is saying down there in Tennessee, is Derrick Henry, is he still with Tennessee, or did they release him, or what exactly was going on with Derrick Henry? Do you know?
I'm not 100%.
He'd be the first one. Like, if he's still there, he'd be the first one I think of. But I know that there was some talk about him changing teams. I don't know if it was like he's officially not there anymore, or like, if he was kind of a Zeke Elliott kind of situation where they got rid of him. So
I think that he is getting close to kind of the end of his contract. I think this is like a contract year for him. So it's like kind of like determining, do we go extension? Do we potentially do a trade and see what we can get out of it, knowing that he's on the back end of his running back life? But yeah, I think that's more so to do with it.
Right. DJ asks, who's Romlock Carrot? Spell it backwards, and that'll tell you. All right, a little basketball here at the end. Phoenix Suns fired Notre Dame alum Monty Williams as their head coach just 2 years after taking the Suns to the NBA Finals. And, of course, after just 4 seasons and leading a turnaround there, the Suns were horrible forever, and he got them to the NBA Finals in year 2. He's gone. Philly just fired Doc Rivers. The Bucks have already fired Mike Budenholzer. Nick Nurse has been fired in Toronto. 3 of those 4 guys, like most of the, all but Monty Williams has won championships. Did they deserve to get the boot? I guess is my question.
Yeah, so we'll start first with Monty Williams. In his first year, they were 34-39. That was the COVID year. They went on an 8-game winning streak to make the bubble. Didn't do much, but I mean, that, like you said, that was coming off a 19-63 season before. So you kind of throw out the bubble year. It's the first year, whatever. So his first year, non-bubble year, they lose in the NBA Finals after going 51-21. Right? He's NBA Coach of the Year runner-up. The next year, they win the West, go 64-18, have the best record in basketball. He wins, Coach of the Year, and then obviously this year they go out in the quarterfinals. But no, Monty Williams should not be fired. I mean, he led a team to the championship not 2 years ago and lost to the Giannis and the Bucks, coached by Mike Budenholzer, who also got the boot. He shouldn't have got the boot. He just recently was removed from a championship. Giannis dealt with injuries in the playoffs. Mike Budenholzer's brother also passed away during the playoffs. I just think those 2 guys definitely did not deserve to get fired. I do think that Doc Rivers deserved to get the boot. And Doc Rivers is a really solid coach, but that's really all he is. He can't go to the next level. And in a lot of his game sevens,
He's won a championship, though. I mean, I realize he's a few
game
years
seven
removed from it,
records.
but he's won a championship before.
I'm just saying, I don't think Monty Williams deserved to get the boot. And I think the only reason he got the boot is because there's a change in ownership. And I think that the new owner kind of wants a new coach to go along with his lineage, essentially.
Apparently that Ishbia guy, or however you say it, he just decided he didn't like Monty Williams. And I think that Philly would be a pretty good situation.
You took my exact words. I said I was going to say, don't be surprised if Monty Williams ends up in Philadelphia this next season.
Yeah, that would make sense. You know, like, again, like after the rebuild and what he did there in Phoenix, it feels like Philly is a team that he could get to the next level, like get them over that hump as close as they were this year. And it's just crazy, like to go from only 4 years, but like you said, new owner and all that. I'm not completely shocked about Doc Rivers because it's a player-driven league, you know, and that's really what it comes down to. These coaches, so many of them just become disposable, and it's amazing. Like you got on the resumes, and these guys all have championships, but they're being shown the door because, like the Budenholzer thing. Like, wasn't there talk a couple of years ago before they won the championship? Like, if he didn't win it, he might have been gone at that point.
Well, and I've heard a lot of stuff too that Darvin Ham, the now coach of the Lakers, was very kind of a prominent role in that championship season. And not having him, and then Budenholzer not kind of living up to expectations or continuing expectations was ultimately kind of the recipe for him. But it's just like you said, it's just so unfortunate that these guys can go from winning a championship. They can go from winning coach of the year, and literally a year or two removed, they're already getting the boot. And there are so many teams in this league that would love to have a head coach of Monty Williams, that would love to have Doc Rivers, that would love to have Mike Budenholzer, that would love to have Nick Nurse. Like, all these guys are great coaches. And I just sadly think that's kind of the realm of professional sports. And that's just outside of, you know, that's not just the NBA. It's the NFL. It's the MLB. Is a lot of these guys are just recycled around, you know. It's just kind of a matter of where you fit now. Do you agree with the new ownership? Do you agree with the player personnel that's on the court, et cetera, et cetera? So I think all these guys won't have a hard time finding a new job at the end of the day either.
Yeah, I agree. But like I saw Kendrick Perkins, you know, kind of lamenting, saying, you know, the players are soft and all this stuff with all the coaching changes and all this different stuff. But look, I mean, this is nothing new. Like Magic Johnson wanted a coaching change. He got one. You know, Michael Jordan, depending on who you want to believe, with like the Doug Collins situation, you know, like he wanted a coaching change. He got one. Kobe Bryant, you know, there was a point with him as well. So it's not like this stuff hasn't happened in the past, you know, and it's been going on for a long time because it's a player-driven league.
I'll even go out on a limb. I think DeAndre Ayton is a large reason why Monty Williams kind of got fired as well. I don't think he's living up to what he needs to be. And I feel like that organization feels like a coach should be able to get more out of DeAndre Ayton. But that's just me. You know, that's my thoughts.
Yeah. What do you think about the Embiid comments after their Game 7 loss to the Celtics, talking about he and James Harden can't win it all themselves?
I think that's not a good look for Joel Embiid, and I'll specifically for this reason. Joel Embiid is the MVP, that meaning you are the best player in the league. You are obviously the best player on your roster. You combine that with someone like James Harden, who had an all-NBA caliber season. I mean, there's no reason that two stars can't drive the majority of an NBA team. I mean, look what Kawhi Leonard did the year he won with the Raptors. He was the main guy of that show and was able to do a lot. So I just think it's a really bold statement to come out and say, as your first time winning the MVP, that you are now kind of offloading the blame to other people, saying that you don't have enough. But I mean, you're the MVP of the league. You should be able, as the MVP, to put together a strong performance. And I get that you have to have pieces around you and the roster needs to be complete, but I don't think that should be the first thing coming out of your mouth when you lose as the MVP.
Yeah, I completely agree. The guy just won the MVP. Harden won the MVP 5 years ago. You've got two players of that caliber. You should be able to go farther. And Decaf not hot on the NBA. He says it's horrible TV. I completely disagree. I've swung a long way on this over the last few years. I think especially NBA playoffs is so much better. Like the quality of play is so much better. Like March Madness is more exciting because of the one and done nature and upsets and all that kind of stuff. But
But if you're
the
looking at the
actual
art of basketball,
the fundamentals of basketball, the fundamentals in these games is so much better than what you're seeing in college right now. And I blame what's going on in college, the lack of those fundamentals, on the one and done, as well as the transfer portal and guys moving around. You don't have guys and teams playing together as much. And so you've lost a lot of the fundamentals. There's a lot more turnovers. It's a lot sloppier basketball. I think playoff NBA basketball is
as much
actually
as you want to
pretty good quality.
potentially hate it, that Lakers and Warriors series was tremendous. Just the
Yeah.
games every night, even though they started late, just the back and forth, the big shot after big shot. I mean, there's a reason why. I saw it today. That that Lakers and Warriors series is the most watched playoff series in over 20 years in the NBA. And that just kind of came out. But it's just, to me, it's good to see. I'd say my number one gripe with the NBA is that, guys, there's just no sense of guys just flop around too much. There's too much like jumping to different rosters. Like Kevin Durant has been on like what feels like 5 different rosters in the last 3 years. I think that would be my only complaint, is guys don't stick it to their long-term contracts. But that's just my opinion on that. But overall, just the when we get down to it, the playoffs and the games themselves, there's just so much skill in the NBA right now, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree. D-Rock says, before exiting, probably one or two shows where you can step in late to the program and you don't have to play catch up with the discussions. Chat. Thanks, gentlemen. Thank you very much, D-Rock. We do appreciate it, and we appreciate all our listeners / viewers. Appreciate you having us. And, decaf, NBA hasn't been good since Jordan played. Obviously, that is a very subjective take. I mean, I definitely watched more NBA during the that Jordan period in the 90s, probably because I was in college, and like for a lot of it didn't have as much to do at that point. But again, like I think the game has
Hearing
changed.
you say
There's
that
a
you
lot of good
watched the
athletes.
NBA is such a big thing, because it's just not that you didn't like the NBA, it's just you never watched. And so now when I hear that you're like, yeah, I tuned in and watched this game, I'm like, who are you? Who is this person?
Who is this guy? This wasn't happening when I lived in that house. All right. Well, that's going to do it for tonight. Thanks as always. Again, we do appreciate it, and we will talk to you tomorrow. Jesse, I will talk to you later in the week as well. We'll talk to you later on IB Nation Sports Talk.